so this is not going to be too much of a production here, but I am about to go drive the car and actually get into some real boost for the first time since the dyno day. The actual dyno was about a week ago, and I just cruised the car home, barely got into boost at all. I can truly say that I don't know how fast the car is. Today's goal, I just want to kind of go out and document the drive. I'm going to do some data logging. I got my laptop with me, and my main goal is to get the boost actually turned back down to a safe level for the fuel system that the car has in it. When we were getting up close to the 500 horsepower mark, we're definitely running the car out of fuel. It's starting to go a little bit lean. Now on the dyno, that's, you know, it's relatively safe. We're only going into the 13s for about 1 second or so. Got fans, optimal intake temps, optimal coolant temps. Not really that big of a deal, but it's not really sustainable, and you definitely don't want to be running your fuel injectors at 100% duty cycle. So anyways, I'm gonna take the car out, and the safe level for this fuel system is right around 450 to maybe 460 wheel horsepower. That extra 40 horsepower on top is just a little bit too much for it. That's between 24 and 25 pounds of boost. I've lowered the boost down quite a bit now, and I'm gonna slowly taper it back in, try to get right around that, 24 and a half level. So anyways, I'm gonna take it out and see how it is. Gotta give it a full tank of the good stuff. About to be ready to rock and roll. And so I've been driving the NB around, which is about 125 horsepower at best. Oh my God, dude. That was right at 20 or 21 pounds, so just over 400 horsepower. Like I said, I wanted to bring the boost down a little bit so I could slowly feed it back in. We're gonna take it out to one of my tuning roads and get this baby up to about 24, 25 pounds. Get this baby up to where it's, I don't know, I mean, I just spun third gear down the entire on-ramp. The tires are cold still, but man, what a riot. I just fed about 5% more duty cycle into the boost controller, so gonna get out to a nice little flat road here and do like a nice pull, get a data log, and see where the boost is at. Oh my God. It's too good, man. I've been missing this power. I can't even describe that, dude. Oh my God. But I forgot to do a data log, so that means I gotta do it again. Okay, it's hitting 23, but falling to 20, so I raised her up in the top end. Let's see what she does. This thing pulls so freaking hard. What the heck? The top end is crazy. Okay, I'm gonna look at the log real quick. I feel like it's faster than it just was, but on the last pull before I changed it, it was only like 20 and a half pounds, which is still like just over 400. So I'll check the log now and see what it's at. So I checked the last log. It's just under 23 pounds of boost now. That's probably roughly 440 wheel horsepower. And I'll probably just leave it right here. I clicked it up a couple more. Maybe we'll get up into that 23 and a half range. But the car's ridiculously fast. And if I'm honest, the car doesn't need to be any faster than this. But there's one little problem. Toby, who owns the shop that I dyno at, just happened to mention in passing that the Miata engine record for his dyno is 510. I'm just gonna go for it. It's now or never, right? Let's just go for it. 400 is so last year, man. We're going into the fives. So I'll have a video redoing the fuel system, and I'm just going for it just to do it, just to say, hey, I built this motor and it made this much power. Maybe it won't even make it to the dyno day. Maybe it'll just blow itself to pieces like this week, but we're gonna see. So anyways, I'm gonna do a couple more pulls on the way home, and wow, it's crazy what just an extra like 30 to 40 horsepower feels like. Well, it's basically an extra 10%. I can't imagine what it's gonna be like at 500, but it was actually hooking very well in third gear, so that's good. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say. I'm gonna go do a couple more pulls. Well, just lost fuel pressure. The pump is running, but it's like there's no resistance. I checked my fuel pressure gauge and it's getting up to like 15 or 20 psi and then dropping. So I could have lost like a diaphragm in the fuel pressure regulator or something. I'm not really sure. It's got enough fuel pressure to drive home as long as I don't get into boost. But kind of sucks. I wondered why it was stalling so much. So anyways, another thing to figure out. Look, I already got a new fuel system on the way. How convenient. I'm gonna freaking limp this thing home, and the saga continues. I'll see you in the next one. Alright, since this was a pretty short video, I want to go in depth with something that I've talked about in the last couple of videos but haven't really explained, and that's running out of fuel, or finding the limit of your fuel system. Now, there are two main components in a fuel system, and when you're turning up the power on your car, turning up the boost, typically you're going to find the limit of one of those two things first. Now, it could be the fuel pump, or it could be the injectors. How do you know which one you're at the ceiling on? Now, of course, when you're building your car, you can go online to the fuel calculators and figure out what you need. But if you're on the dyno and you're cranking that boost up little by little, the way I was in the dyno video, I knew I hit the limit of something, and well, how the heck do you figure that out? So let's say you're doing pull after pull, the car starts to go lean, and you're turning up what's called the injector duty cycle. And the duty cycle of a fuel injector, to put it simply, is the percentage of how long the injector is open, allowing fuel to flow through it, versus how long it's closed. So if an injector is at 50% duty cycle, it's open half the time that it's closed, basically. If it's at 100% duty cycle, which you're not supposed to do, that means the injector is just open. It's not ticking, you know, opening for a certain amount of time, letting fuel through and then closing. It's just locked open. Now, I did that on the dyno to kind of do a little experiment, but you're never supposed to run your injectors at 100%. You're only supposed to go up to about 85%. But anyways, if you are turning the injectors up and they're all the way maxed out, and your fuel pressure is still maintaining what it's supposed to be, and the car is leaning out, that means you are out of injector flow, and you have to either upsize your injectors or raise the fuel pressure. So in my case, the car did start to go lean on the dyno, and the first thing we tried was raising up the fuel pressure. Now, the fuel pressure regulator in the Miata, as with most fuel pressure regulators, is a rising rate regulator, which raises 1 psi of fuel pressure per 1 psi of boost pressure. And the reason is this injector sits in the motor, and you have the fuel rail on top, and you have the intake manifold on the bottom. Now, when your turbo starts to build boost, it goes into the intake manifold, and it actually pushes up against the fuel system when the injector is open, and it fights the pressure that's inside the rail. So you need a rising rate fuel pressure regulator in order to balance those pressures. So if you have 60 psi of fuel pressure in the rail and no boost in the manifold, it's the same thing as having 80 psi of fuel pressure in the rail and 20 psi of boost in the manifold. Now, I should have remembered to take a video of my fuel pressure gauge during a pull. I didn't do that, but I found a video that someone took you can see the fuel pressure gauge. It's a little pixelated, but you can see what the needle's doing. So take a look at this video real quick. So I raised the base fuel pressure to around 60 or 65 psi. The dyno pull starts, the boost starts to build. You can see, as it should, that the fuel pressure is rising with boost. And then as the pull continues and the engine starts to make more and more horsepower, the fuel pressure starts falling off. Now you have to know how a fuel pressure regulator works in order to understand why that's happening. Here's the whole fuel system. You have the pump feeds fuel directly to the fuel rail, then it goes to the regulator, and then the regulator controls how much fuel goes back to the tank. If the fuel pressure starts to fall, what the regulator does is pinch off that supply back to the tank in order to maintain fuel pressure inside the fuel rail, while eventually the fuel pressure regulator will close all the way and not let any fuel back into the tank, which means 100% of the fuel supply from the pump is going through the motor. And eventually it'll start making so much horsepower that it will consume all of that fuel and still start going lean. And if you're dropping fuel pressure like that, that means you are out of fuel pump, or you have to get a bigger fuel pump. So just wanted to kind of clarify that, because I know the fuel system and the pressures and duty cycles and injectors and pumps and all that stuff is a pretty confusing topic, and that in a nutshell is how you find the limit of something. So in my case, the pump is the limit, but I know that the 1000cc injectors in the engine are pretty close to their limit as well, which is why I upsized both pieces. And speaking of finding the limits of something, that's a perfect segue into something I haven't done for a couple of years on the channel, and that's introducing a new series of motivational moving parts. Now I've done synchro rings, whole gears from transmissions, my exploded connecting rod and bent valves from my old 1.6 liter engine, and this time I tried to step the quality up just a little bit. Check these things out. Introducing the crushed intake valves from the VVT Beast motor. These things are the reason I had to rebuild my entire head, and they're the whole reason why the car is even making close to 500 horsepower. So I decided to shine them up, give them a nice little display case. Each one of them comes with a placard telling you which port your valve came from. These are available on my website right now at thecarpassionchannel.com/store. Obviously, there are only 8 available. I'm assuming they're gonna sell pretty fast, as all of these things usually do. So if you're thinking about getting one, you better jump on it. And as always, all the funds raised through the motivational moving parts go directly back into the build. This case, basically an entirely new fuel system that's hopefully gonna get the car over 500 wheel horsepower. And if the intake valve displays are a little out of your price range, but you still wanna support the builds and the content produced here on the Car Passion channel, you can always buy me a gallon of V85 using the link down in the description, or you can just keep enjoying the content for free, which I don't plan on slowing down anytime soon. Thanks again for the support, and I will see you on the next Miata Monday.